two concepts related to encrypted messaging that you should always look for if you're trying to weigh a given platform or idea. Does it have what's called end-to-end encryption, sometimes called E2E, and is it open source? And the reason these two concepts are important is, firstly, end-to-end means that the provider, the person who's created this platform, does not have the keys. So even if they were compelled by a government or by a bad actor to reveal the content of a given communication, they couldn't. They're not even capable of it, which means to say that the communication, the only people that have the keys are the people involved in the communication. So that's obviously very important. The second, open source, a little bit more complicated as to why that's important, but in a nutshell, essentially it means that the code, the inner workings of this platform are completely public, and anyone can examine it and audit it for flaws. And so what that provides us, at least, is a degree of transparency, right, and accountability. So the creators of a certain tool can say, we're inviting anyone from the security community, and thankfully there exist many dedicated researchers who do this either on their spare time or as part of their work to essentially attack these programs and try to find gaps and holes for the greater good. And because it's open source, anyone can go in and do it. And that's another important thing you want to pay attention to when you're looking at a given platform. Interesting application for a VPN that a lot of people don't consider from an investigations point of view isn't even so much from a security state, but it's about the integrity of the story. There was a New York Times investigation that they wrote about themselves, where the target of the investigation noticed that suddenly their website was receiving a ton of hits from the New York Times IP. And so that tipped them off that there was an investigation underway. So using a VPN would actually protect you in that case, right? Using a VPN, and I'm talking about a regular commercial off-the-shelf VPN, will protect you in many cases. Obviously, if we're worried about certain nation-state actors or other very powerful actors, then perhaps a VPN isn't enough. But for most cases, I think it is. And they're cheap. Don't become dogmatic about only digital security or about only encryption and things like that. Because you have to remember that any sort of given system is only as strong as its weakest link. And so you can be using the world's best encryption techniques, but you're sitting in a coffee shop where someone can be looking over your shoulder and reading what's on your screen, right? So you have to keep all of that stuff in mind. You could be followed. I mean, remember, if we're talking about the traditional forms of surveillance, those have existed for thousands of years, right? Physical tracking and secret police around the world are very good at that. And the digital stuff is new to them. So don't forget that it's a balance between these two disciplines, between personal security, operational security, and digital security, right? Making sure that that's all maintained at the same time. And of course, also, to not get lost in the minutiae of details and remember that everything matters. Your social media presence matters. The fact that your source needs to be conducting the same measures that you're taking, right? So if you're going to do everything right, but your source isn't, then you're exposing them to risk unnecessarily. So the reason why I tend to always emphasize don't go crazy just right up front on the security is because you have to remember that it's not just you, but everyone involved in the story that needs to take these practices.